The fish which we're going to be talking about today is commonly known as the suckerfish. As I think most of you all might be aware of it, it's called the suckerfish or the tank cleaner, or by their actual name, Plecos. And since they are one of the most underrated fish in the hobby, especially with beginners, because most of the beginners they kind of assume or tend to understand that Plecos are only for to clean your tank and eat up all the algae and stuff like that. But we're going to be looking at a broader spectrum today. So I'll be shedding some light on them and clarify some myths about them as well. So did you know there are more than 600 species of Plecos? And though each species are categorized by names, they are still referred to by numbers. Why numbers? As new species of Plecos were being discovered, and this actually caused fish to be given many names and caused confusion among importers, exporters, and aquarium hobbyists as well. The first official L number was given to a Pleco in the year 1988. And some of the most famous and sought after Plecos are one of the main Plecos I remember. According to me, I just kind of put a list together which I would love to have in my tank, right, or in my fish room. So the first one would be the zebra Pleco, that is number L46, and next one would be the gold seam gold nugget, which is L177. And then you have your orange cheek pine cone Pleco, which is again L95. And then you have your leopard frog Pleco, which is L134. And then you have your blue phantom Pleco, which is L128. And then you have your gold nugget Pleco, which is L18. Then you have your red lizard whiptail. Again, a lot of difference in color from the L10 Pleco. So again, this is a little difficult, but then again, once you'll get a hang of it, and once you again 600 species, and again it's counting, right? It doesn't end there. So remembering them by names is going to be a little difficult. So hence the numbers. I think even the numbers are going to be a little difficult since there are so many varieties. But what comes to mind are these. And then you have your Emperor Pleco, which is L204. And then you have your Red Tiger Pleco, which is L397, I think. And then you have your, there was another Pleco, but I forgot the name. I think that was L236. That was another Pleco which I would love to have in my tank, but I forgot the name of it. It was a very beautiful Pleco. And then you have your L368. I think that is the Moon Pleco. Right? So highly sought after Plecos. I think I've named more than 10 Plecos so far. More than 10, I assume, yeah. So these are some of the Plecos which I would love to have in my tank, right? And by now you might be wondering what sort of Pleco is the what sort of Pleco is the common Pleco, and if it has a number. And it surely does. All the Plecos have numbers, and even the common Pleco which we see regularly, right? That also has a number, and apparently that is your L21. That is your dark Pleco. Apparently they categorize in L21 and L20 the albino Pleco, which again, those are your common Plecos. So I'm not sure how many of you all actually remember Night Fury. That was one of the common Plecos which I had way back when the clan was there. So that fellow was, I think, I got him as big as 2 inches, and he grew up to be close to 1.5 feet, right? So that's a long way. So close to 18 inches is what I would say. So that's one of the reasons why I would avoid getting the common Plecos, because they tend to grow very big very quickly actually. So what is the alternative? Again, if you want to have Plecos, then I would recommend your clown Pleco, bristle nose, or your bushy nose Pleco. As the brilliant brittle nose Pleco is what I assume. That would be 107, or even your starlight bristle nose Pleco. So why I would recommend these Plecos is because one, they don't get as big as your common Plecos. I think the maximum they would get up to 6 inches. And to busting myths. Right? So I've been asked a lot of questions, my Plecos keep dying, I'm not sure why. So apparently one myth that I actually want to bust is with regards to, are Plecos carnivores? Right? There are people who witnessed their plecos latching onto their fish. Apparently, even goldens kind of being latched onto, and they kind of keep swimming around and stuff like that. So the reason why they do this, one, not because they're carnivores, but then again, so they kind of feed on the slime on the fish, and that's the only reason they kind of latch onto it. But then again, however, there are plecos that are carnivorous, that are vegetarian, and omnivorous also for that matter. So it depends on the species entirely. So your regular pleco, that is your L21 and your L23, are omnivores. In the wild, they kind of feed on carrion. Carrion is nothing but flesh, which is actually rotting and kind of withering away in the water. Which is decaying flesh apparently of dead animals or fish or anything of that sort. And so my advice would be not to house them with regular goldens, especially as they are docile in nature and have a thick slime coat, right, like the Oscars, which the plecos tend to kind of snack on. Plecos wouldn't outwardly attack them, like wherein your cichlids and all, they go nibble on a fin. Wouldn't be the case, but however, they will kind of latch onto them kind of to feed on the slime of the fish. And you could actually feed it, like your cucumbers, your zucchini or lettuce. You could actually feed these to your plecos. So that way, what happens? Your plecos will actually survive a longer time. And these are food which they actually like. Taking veggies, well and good. If it's not, then you would kind of feed them sinking pellets and flakes. The thing is, plecos are bottom feeders, right? So they kind of feed on the bottom of the floor. So if you're going to be feeding them something like floating pellets, it's going to be a little difficult. And a lot of people do this mistake wherein they kind of tend to feed all the fish. They tend to assume that the fish will actually feed on the rest, whatever is left in the tank. It'll actually feed on it. What happens if there's nothing left in the tank, right? What if the fish have already consumed whatever food was actually fed to them? Then what happens? So that is something that they need to be careful about, where they kind of feed the fish. In particular, every single fish in particular, especially your bottom feeders, right? Your plecos. So the second myth I would like to bust is with regards to, do plecos overgrow the tank? Plecos, like I mentioned earlier, plecos will definitely overgrow your tank, but again, it mainly depends on the species, right? I've actually witnessed. I did watch a few documentaries with regards to plecos getting as big as your what do you call that? Right? Plecos are capable of getting that big, so it is advisable to choose your fish very, very wisely before introducing them into your tank, because it's not like a choice wherein you can right. You cannot just take it and replace it, right? Since you're introducing a fish, you need to be very careful. Beat any fish for that matter, not even only plecos, even your any sort of fish that you bring into your tank, right? It could be goldens, it could be cichlids, it could be anything. Correct, you need to choose wisely of what you're introducing into your tank, because one wrong fish in your tank will actually ruin the whole setup. Correct, because imagine if you're going to be introducing a pleco, a 2.5 in your golden tank, and this fellow is going to keep bullying your fish, your goldens, and your goldens are going to be tormented, they're going to be stressed, and again what is going to happen is that's going to lead to illness, right? So the best thing to do is choose wisely, think twice before you actually, what sort of a fish are you planning on getting, and what sort of a tank are you going to do, what sort of a setup is it going to be. It's completely based on that, right? Moving on to the next myth. So we're going to be looking at, are plecos expensive? As the supply is less than the demand, hence some plecos are very expensive. Prices vary according to the location, and breeding some plecos is very difficult, because they kind of want a particular habitat, right? They only breed in certain habitats, then will you be able to breed certain plecos, and that is the reason some of these plecos are pretty expensive. Like I mentioned earlier, the names which I mentioned, right? Your zebra pleco, I think, will cost you around 20k, I was told. So, and again, your blue phantom plecos also are on the little on the higher side. So apparently all these, right, the price what I'm mentioning is in rupees, and it kind of tends to differ according to the location and the person you're buying it from. And because again, breeders also, there are renowned breeders for their quality. And the main myth that we wanted to bust is, do plecos actually clean your tank? So plecos do clean your tank, but then again, if people are assuming that the plecos are going to be feeding on the bio load of other fish, because that's one misconception a lot of people actually have in this hobbies, especially the beginners. They tend to think the pleco, you put in a pleco, the pleco is going to consume all the bio load, but kind of feed on the leftover, whatever is the leftover food, right? So if you're getting a pleco, please understand that it's not going to be feeding on your feces and cleaning up the bioload and sort. It's only going to be helping with cleaning your tank in the sense it's going to be feeding on the algae in your tank. So if you got a tank with a bright light, it's there's going to be a lot of algae, right? And only then your pleco is going to come in handy, wherein it's going to clean up all your algae. And again, everyone fancies a different fish. I personally would prefer a pleco over an algae eater, because plecos get to work quicker than algae eaters, what I felt from my experience. So that's one of the reasons I would get a pleco to clean my tank.